We'll catch it soon.
Just as a quick matter of housekeeping, we're going to be circulating a pad of paper and a pen. If you would like to be on the Historical Society's email list and learn about future events that we are doing like this, please give us your name and your email address so we can contact you in the future. Yes, we also have a Facebook page with the Historical Society of Greater Lansing. We also have a website, lansinghistory.org, where we have information about our museum efforts to collect objects from the community. We will have information up about the next exhibit we're going to be opening, which is called Lansing Eats. It's going to be all about food culture in Lansing over the years. That's going to be opening on May 31st and will be up this summer. Our exhibits are available to be seen at the Kreitz Building, which is on the corner of Washington and Oakland. It's a historic home. We do have an office suite in the basement of it. Go to our website to learn more about when the exhibits are open. We do regular openings the first Sunday of each month, and those will be beginning again in June. We also take appointments to come in and see the exhibits. So if you have a group of friends you'd like to get together and come down this summer, we'd love to see you. Speaking of eating, as you take a look back here, you will see the dining hall. One thing that I think is very convenient about the campus is that many of the buildings are still actually labeled with the purpose of them. Now, when you look at the history of the School for the Blind, there were certainly ups and downs with the population. The peak population was in the late 1960s and the early 1970s, which of course makes sense in terms of the baby boom generation. There were also several health issues at the time that led to a small surge in numbers in the blind community. For example, the issues with thalidomide. One result of the thalidomide use was that some of the children who were born to mothers who had taken thalidomide, some of those children were blind. There was also a rubella epidemic in the early 1960s. Rubella, known to a lot of us as German measles. As a result of that rubella, there were many people who lost their eyesight. There was also a heightened chance that any baby who was born premature at this point in time ran the risk of becoming blind because of how they were treated in the hospitals. Children who were born premature, and this was actually how Stevie Wonder became blind, were put in incubators with increased levels of oxygen. And the idea was to help their lungs, because of course the lungs are one of the last things to fully develop in an infant. And unfortunately, as the child matured and as their lungs started to function better, they would not ease them off of the oxygen. They would just simply say, okay, that's it, they're better, we're going to take them out. And as a result, this would cause damage in the eyes where the retina would actually detach. And as a result, a lot of infants became blind because of that medical treatment. It makes you wonder today what we are doing to ourselves medically that in 30 or 40 years we will come to regret. The numbers that I was able to find from the late 60s and the early 70s indicate that the peak population of the school actually had well over 200 students here. And those were students living on campus. If there were students in the Lansing area, just in Lansing families, I believe it was also an option for them to live at home and come here during the day. Now, that being said, of that population, they were housed largely in the back, and we'll talk a little bit more about their dorms in a few minutes. They would often, though, eat in the dining hall. Now, there would be some family-style meals that they would have in their dorms, but the dining hall was certainly a place where they would gather together. Eventually, though, as they built the cottages that you see in back here in the mid-20th century, they did start to take some of their meals more in a family-style setting, where you were not going into a cafeteria with a lunch lady and so on. The idea was to gather the students together in a more intimate setting. Now, they were assigned to the cottages based largely by age, and of course based by gender. So you would have high school boys in this cabin and high school girls in another, and younger students certainly. And one of the things that they would teach, one of the life skills, was proper table etiquette and table manners, things that many of us in the sighted world take completely for granted. For example, how to fill a glass of water and to know when it is full. Simply take your found fascinating, how to butter bread. Now again, this is something most of us don't really think about. You know, perhaps this is something Mom taught us long ago, but according to the folks I talked to at the Department of Education, there were two different techniques that were taught. One would be to take a piece of bread, you have your butter knife in the other hand, and you would do 4 stripes across, working from the top of the loaf down in 4 even strokes. The other was called the 4 corners method, where you would do a stripe across the top of the bread, then you would rotate it, do another stripe, rotate it, do another stripe, and around. And this was one of the real advantages of a school like this, was you had teachers, you had house parents, you had people who understood different ways that it would be easiest to learn these things for the students on campus. And there was really an emphasis on, again, teaching them how to live in a sighted world, where it would be a challenge to know how to butter one's bread at first when one is a child. Certainly that was something that an atmosphere like this provided. Now also, as you take a look behind me, you will see the maintenance shop. Something that I think it's very important to realize is that schools like this were large employers. When you look at where schools and state hospitals, asylums even, were located across the state in the 19th century as they were being established, towns and cities would compete for these because they knew they were going to be major employers. As I was going through the yearbooks and counting staff, at its peak, the School for the Blind had almost 100 people on staff. Now, some of them were part-time, some of them were full-time. Certainly, you had all skill levels. You had teachers who were specially trained to work with VI kids, to work with Braille students who would be here and spend their career here. There was a student teachers program through Michigan State where student teachers would come over and work here. I know at least one woman here tonight who went through that program. There were also, though, a lot of ordinary people. There were maintenance people who worked on staff. There were several people who worked as handyman and who would keep up the facilities, the buildings. Custodians. They were what was called house parents, who were people that were employed to come in and to take shifts staying with the kids in the cottages. So there would be someone there 24 hours a day as a resource for them. Now, some of those house parents would also work as aides in classrooms. So it was not uncommon to see them 2 or 3 different places on campus throughout the day. And there were 3 shifts of them. You would have house parents who would come in the morning, help them prepare breakfast. Then they would go to classes. There would be another set of house parents that would come in the afternoon who would help with the dinner preparation, make sure the kids all got to bed. And then a 3rd set of house parents would actually stay overnight in the cottages. And in addition to that, there were also foster grandparents. So you had a lot of people coming in. Foster grandparent program was a way to try to build community and a sense of family here, where they would take local families, match them up with different students, and these families would be their local families. They would come and celebrate their birthdays with them. They would come and celebrate holidays, perhaps when they couldn't make it back home. And certainly this would have been nice for students from mid-Michigan, but think about how much a difference this would have made for students from the Upper Peninsula, who were so far away from home that they likely only made it home once during the school year, probably for the holidays, and then they would come back again. And keep in mind, for some of these students, it was a longer school year. Some students were on a 180-day track, as is common throughout much of the state. Other students were actually on a 230-day track. So they were spending a great deal of their time here. Just to give you a quick rundown of some of the different positions, this comes, I think, from the 1971 yearbook. At the time, there was a superintendent, a principal, assistant principal, a dean of students, 23 secondary teachers, about another 20 primary teachers, an administrative officer, about a dozen secretaries and clerks, 2 switchboard operators, 3 nurses, 3 clinic staff, 55 house parents, a maintenance staff of 12, a custodial staff of 14, and a laundry staff of 6. They even had an on-site laundry where all of the linens and all of the laundry for the kids would be taken care of. They also had a printing center that was a print shop that was on site. And if anyone can tell me where that was, I would be interested.
It was in the basement of the high school building.
Basement of the high school, okay.
I think the best thing we had was the baker when he died. He died in 1968. We never had fresh bread ever.
Fresh bread.
They killed the bread when they brought it out warm.
Better they still put the grounds people
Please.
still apply out.
The ground building and all your pipes and electrical and all your water lines and everything ran through these tunnels. So these tunnels that go from that building, each one of these buildings all around campus with all your lines, the power lines, the water lines.
There was a question earlier, someone had about heating. Was there a steam boiler in this building? That
Yeah.
would
And
serve
the
the
power
It was in the power plant.
power plant, okay. And was that steam heat?
Yeah.
Steam hot water.
We had the old metal radiators that clanged all night.
I don't know if you realize there's people here tonight that were here in the 40s all the way through the 70s here tonight.
I was just 90. We won't talk about the 40s.
At the peak, the enrollment was over 200 students. And that was the late 60s. All right, we're going to, I don't know how best to do this. We're going to go up this hill and around the maintenance shop. The next building we're going to talk about is the music and home economics. And then we're going to move back